How you like that? Nice spin, by the way. Condi Thief? Meet Pistol Dagger Thief. The big alpha build. Did I just fear him? So today, I'm bringing you guys a new build guide. It is the Pistol Dagger Core Thief. Now, the build is going to look pretty similar because every build on Thief takes Trickery and Deadly Arts. At least the ones that are pretty decent. You know, you have some acrobatics instead of Deadly Arts here and there sometimes, but this one will use Deadly Arts, and what it is it is a burst spec that has very decent survivability and somewhat okay sustained damage. So how it works is you're on the Pistol Dagger, you go into stealth somehow, you have a lot of ways to go into stealth, you're also Shadow Arts, and then you go for the sneak attack. And your sneak attack is really buffed up because of a few traits here and there. And then you can also supplement your burst with Mug, which is also pretty good because, you know, it's power and Condi spec. So here's what the traits are. You have Mug, you have Serpent's Touch, you have Lotus Poison, you have Even the Odds, and Even the Odds is... So as you can see here, a lot of these traits are doing Condis, right? So you have weakness whenever you poison, you have vulnerability when you have you steal on something, and you have poison when you steal to something as well. You deal more damage for each Condi on them, so it's a pretty nice hybrid trait there as well, right? Because you're putting Condis on them, and then your power damage is also getting increased. And then you're going to take Improv. Even though that's been nerfed recently, it's still probably better than Potent Poison because your main condition is actually bleeding. But yeah, you'll see here in a bit why these Deadly Arts traits are really good as well. And then in Trickery, obviously, you have increased initiative gains, and you have lead attacks, which is actually really good too for hybrid builds because it increases your damage and your condition damage for every stack that you have, which you get from using initiative, and it lowers the cooldown of your steal. You're of course going to have Sleight of Hand because Bewildering Ambush is not a playmaking skill. You can make a lot of plays with Sleight of Hand, so obviously you want to take that. And obviously Bountiful Theft because that's best in slot. Stealing Boons is not only important for the role of Thief, but you'll see for this build later as well why this trait is really good as well. It all kind of comes together when you see what I have in Shadow Arts. And then obviously Thrill of the Crime is pretty good because you're going to get Swiftness uptime. You don't really get Swiftness other than Meld with Shadows, I believe, right? Yeah. So when you're not in stealth, it's nice to have Swiftness. And Fury and Might is also pretty good because the Fury will give you more of your power damage scaling. You also have some crit chance already, so it's going to just increase that a little bit more. And then obviously Might is a very hybrid boon, right? Because it gives you Condi and power damage. So now in Shadow Arts, you'll see there's been a lot of changes to Shadow Arts recently, but you'll see when you use a heal skill, you gain stealth, so it's really important to kind of get the feel of how your stealth works on your heal. So like if you're attacking someone, you need to because like you'll go into stealth after your attack, right? And how that kind of works is you'll give yourself like, it'll kind of like precast if you have your auto attack on auto cast. You'll kind of like attack before you do your sneak attack. So what you need to do after you heal, you need to stow, right? Otherwise, this will happen, right? and then you saw I just did an auto attack, right? Because it's queuing up the auto attack before I get into stealth, and then it does that. So what you need to do is every time you use your heal skill, you need to stow weapon and then cast your sneak attack once you've gotten into stealth, just like this, stow and then sneak attack, so that you get that instead of just a random vital shot. And that's really important because your sneak attack is way stronger, and you'll see why in a bit. So you gain condition removal when you go into stealth. That's why you don't need Signet of Agility on this build, which is really nice. So it allows you to take triple stun break, which is very survivable, by the way. You just remove conditions while in stealth, and that's a very good trait. Meld with shadows. It gives you longer stealth every time you go into stealth, which is pretty nice. And you move faster while on stealth, so you can reposition very well, because with Pistol Dagger you don't have a lot of mobility. So Shadow Arts, I feel, is uncontested as what you need to take with this spec, because you don't have a lot of mobility, so you need the extra mobility while on stealth to reposition and kind of peel for yourself. And then here's the interesting part. The Venom's trait gives you a stack of Venom every few seconds. I think it's 3 seconds when you're in stealth, and it gives you a single stack as soon as you go into stealth, right? So, and it lasts for 30 seconds, right? So you can go into stealth, leave, go back into stealth, and then you can get more. And I'm not sure if the initial stack will wear off or if it keeps stacking up over time. We can test that right now and see if it goes down to 2 stacks. But I think it's just stacking up, period, which is kind of interesting, but that won't be too useful because you'll be using these stacks, because this build has a lot of sustain and it stays in fight. So it looks like you lose the stack. It doesn't stack in duration, it stacks in intensity. So the reason why this trait is so good is because it gives you poison, which is another cover condi, right? You only get poison on your steel and then your short bow 4, so you want to have poison on your pistol attack, right? So it gives you poison on your burst, right? The important part of this build is the sneak attack. So when I go in stealth, I get the poison, and then I use that poison on my sneak attack. So it gives me poison on my burst, it gives me more cover condis as well, and it gives you more Lotus poison proccing, which is weakness, which is really important for your sustain, because if people are just hitting you for full damage, then yeah, you're still squishy. You're still very squishy. So it helps you upkeep your Lotus poison. It does a lot of stuff, and it also has a little bit of life siphon on it as well, which does extra damage and more sustain. Shadow siphoning is really important as well, because whenever you hit with a stealth attack, right, your sneak attack, you'll life siphon 500, which that's more damage, more healing, and it's also to your burst. So your burst is getting a lot of stuff added on top of it. It's very centered around landing your burst skill, your sneak skill. And then lastly, but certainly not leastly, Rending Shade. I thought that this trait was very bad when it first came out and they changed it a little bit. I still thought it was bad, but now I think I found a build that actually uses this. And what it does is it steals 2 boons when you hit a target with your sneak attack. So notice we're going with the sneak attack kind of theme there. And whenever you hit a foe with your sneak attack that has no boons, you will fear in a 100 radius around you. Now, it's kind of, you had to test this to find this out, but the fear is around you, not around the target, right? So if I use my sneak attack, it has no boons, it doesn't fear. But if I go into melee range and use my sneak attack, it will fear. So if I'm looking to fear multiple people, I want to position myself in a way that will kind of, because it's 180 is pretty small. So what I want to do is kind of like be in the middle here, and then see, even that's like kind of too far from this guy, right? Because I'm not even fearing this, am I? No, I'm not. So you got to be like really close to the target to fear it. So it's not very useful, to be honest. In an AoE, it's more like to hit your main target. But the fear isn't really that important, because the boon rip is really what you want. Because just getting boons off of people in this meta is really good, especially when you have firebrands are very meta. But combined with bountiful theft, this can be a very potent combo. So you steal 3 boons here, and then you steal 2 boons here. Now you're going to be in melee range when you steal as well, so you can get the fear off in melee range, because you'll steal in with your, say for example, I'll do the Dagger 5, and then I'll 1 and precast the 1 into steal, and yeah, I'll steal 5 boons and do a fear, and then I'll do a huge, you know, front loaded burst with my sneak attack as well. So it's a very kite oriented build, where you're able to go into stealth, re-stealth, but then you're also able to do bursts here and there. It doesn't have like a lot of like if I were playing sword dagger or dagger pistol, right, a lot of chase potential, but it has a lot of poke potential and a couple of bursts here and there that you can do very often as well. And it's kind of a safe build too, right, because you're on a ranged weapon. I would say that this is very beginner friendly, this build as well. So that's pretty nice, but it also has a decently high skill cap, because against good players, you'll need to learn when to go into your short bow, right? Because you don't have a lot of mobility and kiting on your pistol dagger set, other than the 3, right? So you need to know when to go into short bow, or how to really land your shadow strikes effectively, right? And we'll go over the weapon skills in a bit as well. Those aren't that important though. It's mostly you want to use the 1, like the sneak attack, right, which is just, you know, bleeds. So yeah, those are the traits. You steal boons, and you do a lot of condition. You have, I think, like 4 conditions, right? You have bleeding on your sneak attack and your auto, you have vuln on your steal, you have poison here and there, and then you have weakness. So you have a decent amount of cover condies. You can also do torment and cripple with your dagger 4, so you can weave that in here and there. And yeah, that's pretty nice. So I mean, that's the thing that holds a lot of condi builds back, is not having enough cover condies. So yeah, that's really nice. And moving on to the weapons, obviously short bow is, you know, every thief build should have that. It's just too good. And also short bow is really good for hybrid damage. I mean, it's a really good power weapon, and it's a really good condi weapon, but for condi it's not as good, right, because you can only use choking gas. But for power it's really good, right, with cluster bombs, and the auto attack has a lot of good bounce cleave. But for hybrid, it's actually, you have all of the skills kind of useful for you, right? You can cleave down bodies with choking gas and trick shot, just like a power build would do, and you can also do cluster bombs like a power build would do, right? And you can obviously, like a condi build, use choking gas to cleave, right? And just spam that. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, a lot of versatility, and it all works for hybrid. And with the pistol dagger set, by the way, if you want to see how to use short bow more effectively, I have a video on that. Just look at my short bow mechanics guide. I'm not going to talk about short bow in depth again. But pistol dagger, you basically just have an auto attack that bleeds. Your 2 skill is a pretty slow vuln and immobilize. I would pretty much never use this because the animation is really slow, and it uses up like really too much of your initiative for just a 1 second immobilize. By the time like your immobilize hits, and then your next hit arrives, they're already not immobilized anymore. So I would say the only reason I would use body shot is like getting decaps on people, which is actually pretty nice, right? That's a decent usage, right? Because your job is to decap a lot of the time. Like if you're standing on the node and they're headed towards you, you just decap them by spamming 2. Shadow Strike is an interesting skill. We'll go over that in a bit. Dancing Dagger, yeah, you don't want to spam this too much, but it's pretty nice for like if there's a cleave situation and you got stuck in your pistol dagger, then you can use that. Also, if you just want to cripple people at range for whatever reason. Cloak and Dagger is really important though, because it's one of your ways to gain stealth, and as Shadow Arts, this gives you a lot of value, right? You gain Condi Cleanse, you gain the ability to use your sneak attack, which gives you tons of value, and it allows you to use, of course, you know, the sneak attack, as I just said, which I will go over as soon as I can show it, which does, it gives you 5 might because of this trait, even the odds. So it gives you 5 might for 10 seconds, which is Condi and power damage increase. It gives you 5 stack of bleed for 6 seconds, which does about 3k damage there, as you can see, which isn't amazing, but for the fact that you can spam it pretty well because you have so much stealth access, it's pretty good. And it also does a pretty high power coefficient if you land the whole thing, right? So it does really decent damage, right? As you can see here. So it does like 1,300 power and then 3,000 bleed. So that's pretty heavy hitting right there. So yeah, you want to just be focusing on, obviously you steal boons as well, right? As I said. So you just wanted to just be spamming Cloak and Dagger on targets that are kind of free, like if you're against a Mesmer, their clones just kind of walk up to you and don't really do too much, and you can get free Cloak and Daggers off of them, like a Ranger pet. Anytime that anything goes near you in melee range, you're kind of looking to Cloak and Dagger. Now, Shadow Strike is kind of the same way. So how Shadow Strike works is it's a very quick attack, very quick, and what it does is it ports you back from the target, and you can use this to kite, but then if it lands, it will give the target 4 stack of Torment for 6 seconds, which is pretty good damage. It's about the same damage as landing your sneak attack, if they're moving, but it also does a second hit once you port back, which has some pretty good power coefficients as well. If that crit, it would do like 3,000 damage, right? So as you can see here, it's kind of like low damage numbers, but because it does a decent amount of power and a decent amount of Condi, it really adds up. So when you do land it though, it becomes repeater, right? So once you get repeater for a couple seconds after landing it, you can just use that, and it's like half of an unload, but it does bleed damage as well. So how you kind of want to do this is when you have initiative, you want to be using your Shadow Strike to port back and just spam repeater, and then when someone goes near you, you need to peel for yourself and reposition. You use your Cloak and Dagger, and then you can go in with burst like that with the steal into sneak attack. And then obviously if I steal to a thief, I get even more sneak attacks, right? Like just for free. And obviously you're gonna take Shadow Step, that's best in slot, and roll for initiative, because it's just, honestly, you don't really need it because you have plenty of initiative on this build. It doesn't use that much initiative, but you might as well because it's just a really good skill right now. There's really nothing else you could take. If you wanted to take the Poison Venom, I don't feel that that's that good. There's less like play potential around that, to be honest, because this skill gives you movement, it gives you initiative, which is damage, and it gives you an evade frame, which is dodging, right? So it's just such a good skill, right? It's just like Shadow Step. It has so many uses to it. and yeah, like a venom would just be purely damage, and I guess like lifesteal gives you some healing, but still not as versatile as roll for initiative. And then blinding powder is another stun break, but it gives you stealth, so it's also versatile in that you can use it aggressively because your sneak attack is so strong. And that's kind of, if you've watched my PvP theory crafting build, that's kind of what you need to have with your utility usage, is you need skills that are synergistic with your build but are also useful in many different situations, like whether you're +1ing or you're outnumbered. It can't just be one situation, because PvP has a lot of situations you have to deal with, right? And that's perfect for this build because it has synergy with the build, and it's useful when being aggressive, and it has self-peel, so it's just perfect for this build. Blinding powder is probably more important than roll for initiative, right? So if you did want to change a utility, you change roll for initiative. But Dagger Storm as well, yeah, it's just a pretty good skill. I don't see Basilisk Venom being too good because it's more burst oriented, whereas this kind of has like kind of pokey bursts. It's not too oriented on going really heavy on like aggressiveness. It's more of a passive build. And Thieves Guild, yeah, that's just, it's too long of a cooldown to not be able to be reset by improv anymore. So Dagger Storm is just good. It's usable in a lot of situations. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole build. I take Wizard Amulet and Adventure Runes. The reason I don't take Traveler is because Traveler does less damage. Adventure gives you, it's one of those power creep runes where it gives you an extra stat boost on the 6 slot. See how it gives 125 condition damage, but it also gives you an extra dodge on your heal, which is really good because this build, it's not using acro, so it doesn't have too many passive dodges other than obviously withdraw and roll for initiative. But yeah, you just have your 2 dodges. You have Vigor from Bountiful Theft, and that's it. So yeah, getting the extra 25% of your dodge bar is pretty good with the Rune of Adventure, and it just scales perfectly with this build, so it works out. As far as sigils, I take energy cleansing on bow almost always. Recently I liked agility, but that's going to be seeing its way out of the game pretty soon with the new balance patch. And as far as the pistol dagger, I would take these aren't the right sigils. I was going to take Agony, and I don't remember what I was taking here. Was it Compounding? So Compounding is kind of like this trait here, where it gives you extra damage per condi on the target. So instead, it's like saying this trait now gives me 3%, but only when I'm wielding these weapons. So yeah, that's pretty much the build. As far as like combos, yeah, you just want to open on people, kind of like steal into your 5 skill and then do a 1, or you can steal into your 3 skill, which is a little bit more sustainy, less bursty, because then you can use repeater. So yeah, what you want to do is like you're auto attacking your target, and then you're kind of like walking towards them to get your sneak attack off, and then you back off a little bit. Maybe you'll use your 3 to back off a little bit, and then you keep getting closer, keep getting closer, keep getting closer. Do this, back off a little bit. Maybe you'll do this combo, keep getting closer, keep getting closer. You always want to be positioning yourself to land more damage, because the damage from this build doesn't really come for free. You got to kind of work for it. Like, that's the hard thing about this build a lot of the time. And then maybe you will go into stealth and then do a huge burst like this, and you'll get the fear off. And what's nice is they can't dodge the whole like, if they see it coming, they can't really dodge it because they're feared. So yeah, that's pretty nice. Like, normally when you steal burst into someone, they're dazed, but they can still dodge. So this is nice because it dazes them and then fears them, which is not the best usage of your daze, right? But the fear kind of like prevents them from dodging, which is really nice because then it lands your full sneak attack and you do the full damage. So let's look at what the sneak attack does to a light golem. So yeah, as you can see there, I did almost half the golem's life in just the initial power burst, and then almost finished it off with the rest of the Condi damage. So yeah, it's a pretty big combo there, and depending on your crits, it could probably finish this thing off. So it's pretty heavy burst for such a survivable build. Okay, so I think I DC'd at the start of this match, so I came in a little bit late and I went too far and I killed their Necro. And now we're looking at this pistol dagger build. So it's actually pretty good at 1v1ing. So I'm taking the 1v1 versus warrior. I missed steal, but you know, I'm still going in. I land a nice fear into the 3 to get some distance, but now I'm outnumbered. So what I do is I start porting around, swap to short bow, disengage, and I have my heal for re-stealth, which will allow me to re-engage with the nice... I do a little bit of a cluster bomb burst there. Usually I'd start with the... yeah, this burst right here, the sneak attack burst, but I did the short bow, I think, because I had the weapon swap still on cooldown. And now I'm just doing a lot of the spamming of the sneak attack here. And there's really nothing the Necro can do about it because I just de-target and I do like half his health if he doesn't dodge it, but it's from stealth. So yeah, that gives me quite a big advantage versus classes that don't have sustain. But versus other classes that do, say like meta 1v1ers like Hollow and Warrior, the matchups are a little bit more difficult. You actually have to use your 3 skill and pistol dagger very well to get your positioning, because you can't just trade with them, right? You have to be avoiding everything they do, and you're limited on dodges with pistol dagger set, right? Because there's no dodges set into it, so you need to land your 3 without getting hit too hard. So here I do my sneak attack. I steal a lot of his boons, and then I steal more of the boons. He's basically got no boons at this point, and what that means is all of my hybrid power damage is doing a lot more, and he's also got tons of vuln, right? It's just I'm doing massive damage because I'm just being I'm free casting basically, right? And here I do a nice little cloak and dagger into steel so that I can basically engage on the mesmer there without getting pistol spammed on, right? Because the D target, he has nothing to target with. And here I have to be careful. I'm going to immediately dagger storm as soon as I see he's starting to shoot projectiles, but most of the stuff they do is projectiles. I miss steal here again. This is actually like pretty poor showing by me, and I use my heal skill while revealed, so I didn't get stealth there. But luckily, I can use Cloak and Dagger on one of his clones, and that'll get me a lot of disengage ability. So as you can see here, I'm playing like absolute garbage, but the build is still, you know, gives me a few chances to make up for that. So I decided to leave though and go to mid because it doesn't feel like my team is getting anything done on the rest of the map, and obviously I have way more power to affect the map when I rotate instead of when I 1v1, so I'm going to just choose to do that instead. And it looks like I can decap far now because they've evacuated from that again, and I decide, yeah, we're not going to go home, we're going to go far. And middle doesn't necessarily have the kills, but they should be outnumbering, which means I think a Mesmer or a Necro will be coming to 1v1 me if they respawn and come here, which is good because I have improv, I get globs, and necros aren't very good 1v1 classes. However, I don't think they did come here off respawn, so I'm going to go check mid. If they do end up decapping far, that's completely fine. So the necro did end up going mid. I missed steal here again, but I decided to go for a cloak and dagger to get a stealth engage. I go for another stealth engage as well with my heal skill, and it allows me to kill the mesmer. Now the necro is missing, but the other mesmer is here. Sorry, there's two mesmers here, and I actually land a really strong shadow strike on the one that's trying to res, and I did like a 3k crit there, as you can see, and that's on top of all the other power damage and Condi damage I had there, and I just ate 2 rogues there. I don't think I was playing very well this match. I don't know why, but you can see that, you know, the build is very versatile with the roles I can play, so it's really good for ranked, and it's also, as you can see, really good for gold players, because I am gold here after going on a huge loss streak. So yeah, it's pretty good in ranked, by the way, for carrying you out of gold or whatever. Trust me, I would know. It carried me out. And I'm joking there. I just had a really bad loss streak there. So in this 1v1, I don't have Dagger Storm to open up with his pistols, but as you can see there, I land my pistol burst into steel, and that did like half of the Mesmer's health. So he uses heal. He's at full health now. There's a little bit of a imbalance there with how that works. His heal does like 8k damage healing, but I still have tons of pressure to add on because I can just do it again, right? My steal is up in a few seconds, and I can just stealth on one of his clones and use my burst again. I do get pretty hard countered by projectile reflect though. You can use the 3 skill. Obviously the second part, the repeater part, will get reflected still, but you can just spam the 3 on pistol dagger, and you can just swap to the short bow and use the 4 skill if really necessary. But yeah, you really want to be landing the projectile from your sneak attack. So a lot of projectile hate does kind of counter this build, and that's probably one of the reasons why it won't be like super meta. But in ranked queues, yeah, it'll be pretty good. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but yeah, this is probably like one of my first matches playing the build. I played it a little bit before, but not with Rending Shade, right? So now I'm going to be chasing this Mesmer. The matchup versus Mesmer is actually pretty easy because of improv on this build and because of stealth. So stealth is really good versus Mesmers because the clone AI doesn't just attack random air, right? It only attacks things it sees. So when you're in stealth, you gain a lot of protection versus clones. So that's why Shadow Arts is really good versus Mesmers, and especially Mesmers in the current meta. They're very clone and AI oriented. So stealth is really good versus that, which makes this build actually kind of like meta countering in a way, which is nice. And as you can see, this warrior is going to attempt to decap our home node. I go for a little bit of a burst play there, but I missteal. That's like my 3rd missteal this match. I was not having an amazing match, but I'm also getting +1 by their Mesmers, so that gives me a pretty good out there, right? It's kind of convenient for me to get +1 there because I don't want to be in the 1v1 since I missed my burst, and then the Mesmer shows up, so it's kind of like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But I do re-engage, and get a decent little steal off on the warrior here. And they try to hold the node, but then they realize that I'm actually running a ranged thief build, and then they decide to kite behind the wall of the pillar, but then I get off immediately to chase them, and so now we're engaged in a little bit of a fight. I'm starting to land some of my abilities. I get a really nice 3 Shadow Strike, which gives me distance and a good burst. And at this point, the warrior, I'm pretty sure, is out of the shout, which gives them all their Condi cleanse, right? It's a very long cooldown. And I struggled to jump up here, and our renegade actually +1s me. So at this point, I want to secure the kill. I didn't really need to steal there, but I see that the beast might be an issue. And yeah, if the warrior rampages, that could be dangerous, so I should have probably fully killed the warrior before I went for the beast. But he dies, and then we kill the beast. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's a pretty good build in solo queue. I think a lot of people will enjoy it because it's also fun and allows you to play a weapon set that's really been unpopular. It's the most unpopular weapon set for Thief probably in all of Guild Wars 2 history. So I think that it's pretty interesting that it now becomes sort of playable, really, by a wider audience. So